This video is sponsored by Blinkist, more about them to follow later. The B-29 Superfortress quite rightly has a reputation as a legendary aircraft. The product of a hugely expensive development program, one costing more than the creation of the atomic bomb, the B-29 was the pinnacle of the World War II heavy bomber. Dubbed the Superfortress, they brought devastation to the Japanese home islands across huge distances, culminating in the delivery of the atomic bombs that brought the final surrender. Almost 4,000 were built, and they would serve in a host of roles. But the B-29 wasn't without flaws, and even as the aircraft was just going into action for the first time, steps were being made to improve it. This would lead to the Boeing B-50, which would refine the Superfortress further with better engines and used improved alloys to provide additional strength. The end of the war curtailed production, but 370 B-50s would be built. These started entering service with Strategic Air Command in 1948 and would serve in the United States Air Force for the next 20 odd years. But Boeing still thought they could do better with the basic design, proposed to develop the ultimate variant of the Superfort, the B-54. This was initially type designated the B-50C, and this served as a designation for the prototype, but the changes were significant enough that the aircraft was considered worthy of its own designation. Though it is notable that US aircraft manufacturers did, and do, like to change designations to justify fresh orders. But while the B-54 certainly looked like its predecessors, there were some major differences. The most notable of these was, again, a change to the engines. The Pratt & Whitney R4360 radial engines of the B-50 were to be upgraded with a variable discharge turbine, or VDT. This system used a nozzle for the engine's turbo supercharger exhaust, which could constrict flow and create jet thrust from the nozzle. And it seemed to work. Output from the VDT engine was rated as equivalent to 4,500 horsepower, in comparison to the B-50's standard radials that put out 3,500 horsepower. And the VDT engines more than doubled the power output of the original B-29's Wright duplex Cyclones, which produced 2,200 horsepower each. The B-54 was going to need this power boost. Though it might look like the B-29, and the first prototype was essentially a modified B-50, the B-54 was going to be a lot bigger and heavier than its forebears. Wingspan was increased by 20 feet to 161 feet 2 inches, about 49.1 metres, which required additional outrigger landing gear to be fitted to stabilise the aircraft on the ground. The fuselage was lengthened by a little under 11 feet, making the aircraft 111 feet or 34 metres long. Now a brief word about this video's sponsor. Blinkist is a unique service that offers what I think can best be described as trailers for books. From thousands of non-fiction titles of various categories, Blinkist provides the key points from the text and condenses them into 15-minute written or audio explanations. These blinks, see what I did there, allows you to examine a book of interest, provides you with a brief but thorough insight into it, and enables you to decide if it is relevant to you before deciding whether to purchase or not. With over 4,500 non-fiction titles in 27 different categories, there is a large store of varied topics, and that allows you to explore fields that you might hesitate to spend money on as you don't know whether it would be worth the investment. Take for example this little number, Drinking Water, A History by James Salzman. Not a subject I generally pay any attention to, but Blinkist allows me to review the book's premise and help me decide if I think it's worth buying. In my opinion, it is a more useful way to gain an idea on whether you will find a book worthwhile than conventional reviews, which are entirely subjective after all. So if you're interested in Blinkist, check out the link in the description. That will give you a free 7-day trial and 25% off premium membership. So, back to the B-54. A major change was made to the bomb bay. This was considerably enlarged, meaning that the maximum possible bomb load went from 20,000 pounds, 9,100 kilos, of the B-29 and B-50 to 36,000 pounds, that's 16,000 kilograms. Additionally, the fuel capacity was much increased, including the ability to carry auxiliary tanks in the bomb bays. Range was much improved as a result. Where the B-29 had a maximum range of 5,600 miles, the B-54 was expected to have one of over 9,000 miles. And in terms of combat capability, the B-54 was going to be much more capable than the B-29, which was still the backbone of Strategic Air Command and only a few years old itself. As a detail sheet prepared by Boeing for the United States Air Force shows, with both types carrying a 10,000-pound bomb load, the B-54 could cruise 60% further at 22% faster. The basic defensive weaponry of the B-54 was also tweaked. It retained the 10 remote-controlled 50 caliber Browning machine guns in 4 turrets as its forebears, but had a manned tail turret that had 4 of the heavy machine guns. The enhancements were enough that on May 29, 1948, the United States Air Force ordered 7 B-54s as pre-production testbeds and 23 RB-54 long-range reconnaissance aircraft. 2 months later, on July 29th, the USAF confirmed to Boeing that the B-54 was an important part of a new 5-year national defence plan. On September 3rd, the USAF instructed Boeing to tool up to be able to build 30 airframes a month. Everything seemed set for the B-54 to become a major part of the United States Strategic Bomber Forces, which didn't happen. On April 18th, 1949, the orders were all cancelled. Boeing were, as I'm sure you can imagine, furious. But the decision was final, and the B-54 never saw the light of day. The one model under construction, the B-50C prototype, was broken up, and that was that. So what happened? Well, a couple of things. Firstly, in October 1948, Strategic Air Command was taken over by Curtis LeMay. He apparently was not happy by the state of things and set about shaking up the whole place. And he wasn't apparently a fan of the B-54. Recognising that it was basically an improved B-29, LeMay couldn't see the point of investing in what was rapidly to become an utterly obsolete design. Because even as the B-54 was being ordered, the new Convair B-36 Peacekeeper was entering service. And if the B-54 was big, the B-36 was titanic. With performance that firmly put the Superfortress in the shade, this was going to provide the United States' primary strategic bomber for the immediate future, supported by the less capable B-29s and B-50s. And on the drawing boards was an even more formidable aircraft, one that would fulfill SAC's strategic bomber requirement throughout almost the entire Cold War. So really, the decision to drop the B-54, the ultimate Superfortress, really does seem like the logical choice. Huge thanks to Blinkist for sponsoring this video. Remember to check out the link in the description. And also a massive shout out to the historians at Boeing, who provided practically all of the archival material on the B-54 that I have used here, and without whom I would not have been able to make this video. Have a good one, and I will catch you all again soon.